Coming up, we crack open the arsenals of the world on course to a countdown of the greatest ever weapons. From missiles to longbows, machine guns to swords, inventing ways to kill each other is as old as time.
Charge for horse!
And developing better ways to bump each other off seems to be the mother of invention. But which weapons are the best? The greatest ever has shot a candle like a bullet, boomeranged a melon, and crushed a gun with a Humvee in the search to find the best weapon for the individual combatant. We canvass some of the world's most respected weapons experts for their top 10 instruments of destruction. They include Tom Clancy, world-class novelist and military observer.
Well, it beats being hit with a knitting needle, but the smaller the hole it makes, the less likely it is to kill you.
Robert Hardy, Shakespearean actor, longbow expert.
If the man was in range, they could pop an arrow in while he was gulping air.
And Royal Armoury's hardman, Martin Pegler.
Feeling lucky, punk?
To qualify for the greatest ever, the weapon must deliver maximum damage for minimum training and demonstrate a global impact. Take cover. The greatest ever weapons. Coming in at number 10 on our list is the 1.5-meter-long slicing sword that was the centerpiece of an entire warrior class for 1,000 years. If you were a Japanese samurai, you were as good as naked without your katana.
The katana is the classic samurai sword, the sword that we associate with this almost mythical warrior from the East.
It's a slicing weapon. It's designed for removal of limbs, removal of heads. These swords are perfectly capable of cutting a man from his neck right the way down through his body to his groin with a single blow.
The characteristic curved single-edged blade of the katana first appeared around 900 AD. And in the hands of the samurai, this sword came to represent the essence of the warrior mindset, an instrument of violence and martial philosophy.
Hand-to-hand combat with edged weapon is the most absolute of human conflict. The lessons learned here raise the human consciousness to its highest level because it's the most demanding and there's the most at stake, your life.
James Williams teaches samurai skills to the modern military. He invited the greatest ever to experience some of the secrets of the katana.
What we're cutting then are woven mats that we soak with water. In feudal Japan, they cut people instead. Prisoners were cut all the time. They used them to test the swords to see the impact it had on tissue and bone.
The anatomy of the katana begins and ends with the blade.
What you have is a slightly curved shape which facilitates the blade spending a long time in the cut. It's essential for that to happen because the longer the blade spends in the cut, the deeper it will cut. A large number of the cuts in the repertoire of the samurai were designed to be using the last 4 or 5 inches of the sword. By only going 2 to 5 inches into the body when you make a cut and still get your sword back when you're using it. First cut would be hitting the front of the head.
Wooden swords called bokken are often used when practicing, much less messy.
And a very common one was to strike the clavicle. This would sever the subclavicular artery, split the ribs and puncture the lung, and then cut through the sternum, open the front of the heart, and the sword would cut its way out so that I could use it immediately.
There is sophisticated technology behind the katana's performance. The genius of Japanese smiths lies in creating a blade that is both sharp and flexible, and the key to that is their heat treatment of the finished blade. By coating the blade with clay, the rate of cooling is controlled. This effectively creates 2 types of steel in the one blade. One type is flexible, the other very hard, which means your katana can be sharp and shatterproof. The boundary between the 2 steels is called the hamon and is unique to every sword. With the average katana fight lasting just a few seconds, tactics were a samurai obsession, and katana combat was all about deceiving your opponent.
Swords are not swung by baseball bats by old-style samurai. There has to be deception here, which means the smallest amount of possible preparation. If I wind my blade up, I'm going to have problems deceiving my opponent.
The samurai trained from the age of 5 to become expert at the subtle skills required of the warrior. James broke down one of their classic training routines.
I'll draw the attack by giving him an opening. He'll begin to take advantage of that by raising his sword up. As he attacks my head, I hesitate just a second to give him the feeling that he can cut me. The deception in this is that he feels he's going to be successful in this cut.
Katana is a fantastic weapon, but it's limited geographically. It's all tied up with the samurai and his mindset.
The guy who knows how to swing a sword, if you let him get within 3 feet of you, you want to be afraid of him. The reason I prefer handguns is I can address that issue at 40 feet, and he can't do a thing to me.
Despite its reputation as the perfect sword, the katana cuts no deeper than number 10 because it's a weapon caught up in a feudal time warp. No amount of ritualized skill will protect you from a bullet. Our next greatest ever weapon defines the style of another era. Welcome to the secretive world of the Walther PPK.
The PPK is very much of a cult weapon.
James Bond is a modern cowboy, and he needs a trusty friend. The PPK fits the bill. It can fit into James Bond's pocket, but it can fit into his girlfriend's handbag just as easily.
The Walther PPK emerged in 1931, designed as a concealed weapon for the German police. It was rapidly adopted by various secret services. Ian Fleming, the creator of 007, was in British naval intelligence and knew of the PPK's reputation.
When the Walther PPK was invented, it was just considered top of the line. Obviously, that's why Q gave James Bond the Walther PPK.
It is the culmination of years of development, packed into one small, concealable, lightweight semi-automatic pistol.
Still credible after all these years, the PPK has a starring role at this concealed weapons training center in California, where these women are about to go undercover.
I have never done this before, so it'll be a great learning experience.
I'm a stunt woman. I'm a classy stunt woman. I don't have a lot of muscles, so I need a smaller gun.
I actually own a PPK. When I bought the gun, I figured if it was good enough for James, it would be good enough for me.
But will the PPK experience leave them shaken or stirred?
Now, as far as the safety, when you can see red, you know the safety is off.
The PPK's claims to fame include a foolproof safety system. Nice to know if you're going to be tucking one into your pants.
The safety mechanism blocks the trigger, and it doesn't work at all. That's all you can do with it, which makes it much more user-friendly and much safer.
Another revolutionary feature is that the PPK was the first successful double-action semi-automatic. It means you can fire the first shot without needing to cock the gun, making you much quicker on the draw.
Fire.
And each magazine carries 7 bullets.
It works on the simplest possible system for a semi-automatic, which is blowback. When you fire it, the power generated by the combustion of the cartridge blows the slide back, that collects another round, and it runs forward, chambers a new round, and you fire your second shot. And you can keep on doing that as long as there's ammunition in the magazine.
Okay, back to the holster. Let's talk a little bit about concealability and about how you're going to actually carry your gun in a concealed position. Personally, I like the fanny pack. The reason that I like that, it has a built-in holster right inside. But everybody's different. Everybody may have their own preference. I'm trying to get a hold of Louis Vuitton to make us a nice purse with a holster in it as we speak.
Using the PPK was very exciting. This is how I did the first time I shot. So I think that would stop someone, or at least scare them.
That's where the PPK starts to come unstuck. Its concealability means that it must use smaller bullets.
Okay, this is the bullet for the PPK. It's a .380. It's rather small. Does not have a lot of stopping power. Okay, just as opposed to, say, the .45 Long Colt, which is quite large. You can see the difference in the two calibers. This obviously would not be a concealable gun.
So if you shoot somebody with this, they're just going to be angry?
Yeah. That's a good possibility. Of course, it's always the placement of the bullet is very important.
It is a lightweight bullet. At the more extreme end of its range, it might actually have difficulty penetrating heavy clothing.
This would be a great backup gun. Almost every cop carries a backup gun, and this would be small, concealable, and a nice gun to carry as a backup gun.
The PPK has surprise on its side, but lacks the knockout punch that a truly great weapon needs. The Bond gun makes 009. Still to come on the greatest ever weapons, another 8 ways to skin a cat, and the promise of a real pasting. Greatest weapon number 8 has faded in and out of history several times over the last 2,500 years. Stand easy, it's the pike.
Tactically, the pike is from way back. I mean, go back to Alexander the Great, for heaven's sake.
Pike really follows the axiom that simple is better.
You get about 20 feet of range, and a guy 20 feet away is less likely to hurt you than a guy 6 feet away. It's that simple.
The pike's claim to greatest ever status is because of its enormous tactical impact when used in massed ranks, combined with a simple training regime. Teamwork is the force behind the pike. After Alexander's antics, the pike fell out of favor, but returned to form 1,000 years later.
Throughout the late 14th, 15th, 16th, and even into the 17th century, the pike force was the mainstay of many armies.
Brian McElmoyle is a medieval martial arts instructor and former Canadian Army drill sergeant. The greatest ever challenged him to convert this Toronto rugby team into a crack pike squad in less than 2 hours.
Right turn! By the center! Quick! March!
In days gone by, where you have large peasant armies, you can train those individuals to be quite a ferocious pike squad in very few minutes indeed. And I don't know any other weapon system that falls into that category.
It's a simple weapon, a long wooden shaft with a long iron spear tip right at the end of it. So it's an unwieldy weapon. You need to be physically strong.
The pike square was the basic tactical formation for pikemen. Renaissance armies typically had up to 400 men arranged in this way.
The square formation is very important because it allows you to change direction without changing formation. So you can be marching forward, and then quickly you can march to the left and march to the right, but still present exactly the same threat. The thing about the pike, it's mostly a terror weapon. It's designed to intimidate and force people to run before it actually comes to engagement.
It was the introduction of stirruped cavalry in the 15th century that really brought the pike back to prominence. Pikes grew longer and tactics evolved to deal with the new threat.
Effectively, what you're going to do is kebab any unfortunate horseman who comes too close.
Charge for horse!
You get 100 guys with pikes and 50 guys on horses. The horses will stop short of the pikes because horses are smart enough to realize that you can get hurt that way.
Charge! Pike!
The tactical effectiveness of the pike meant that from the 16th century, there was even a living to be made as a mercenary pike squad. And incredibly, they still exist today. The Swiss Guard is a pike force that has been looking after the Pope for over 500 years. The fact is, the pike refuses to lay down and die. It's not just propping up the Pope. Its legacy is to be seen on army drill squares across the world.
All of the commands, all of the actions that you see with modern rifle drill have their foundation in pike drill.
I thought it was a big stick at first that you would flail around like a dummy, but you end up having to have a lot of control and a lot of discipline.
Give me another 20 rugby players, and we'll replace the Swiss at the Vatican.
The pike is useful only when it comes in a pack. For the individual combatant, better to drop the pike and run. Alexander's empire builder makes it only to number 8. Next up, the weapon that heralded the modern era of warfare by rethinking the idea of a handgun and bringing the joys of black powder to the masses. At number 7, the arquebus.
When I think arquebus, personally, I think changing the state of warfare. And you had projectiles that could not be seen that were wounding and killing.
You wouldn't want to get hit by the bullet from one. At 50 yards, it will actually penetrate about 3 millimeters of steel plate.
Blasting its way to prominence in the Battle of Pavia in 1525, the arquebus became the benchmark for an entire species of guns whose basic design persisted until the 19th century.
It is an important weapon system because it says goodbye to the knights of old and heralds in the new era that we probably associate better with the Industrial Revolution.
The greatest ever arranged to meet with medieval gunsmith Gary Bate and 2 of his clients to experience the arquebus in full effect.
Fire! The things that come out of the barrel, soft lead balls. These that come out of the end of the barrel, a muzzle velocity of about 1,000 feet per second. On impact would do incredible damage. They would just split into bits. You could be hitting the arm and still get a piece of lead in the heart or the lung.
Early guns were crude, fired from the waist, and ignited like a firework.
I think we missed.
By comparison, the arquebus was a revolution. It provided a wooden stock shaped to allow it to nestle in the shoulder, which now meant that you could aim the gun. There was also a simple trigger mechanism, the earliest of which was called a matchlock.
It's called a matchlock because it has a piece of burning match held in some jaws.
The match had to be slow burning to last for the duration of the average battle, about 3 hours.
The match was a particularly unsavoury piece of kit. To make this burn slowly, it was soaked in human urine.
It's the chemical compound saltpeter found in urine that gives the match its fizz. And saltpeter is one of the ingredients of black powder, the oomph behind the arquebus. But early gunpowder was not just powerful, it was notoriously unreliable and messy.
There's actually a horrible substance. It creates 300 times its own volume in a grey-white smoke, so it blots out whatever you're shooting at. And it leaves a terrible residue in the bore, which is called fouling. After 4 or 5 shots, the barrel is so choked up that you cannot physically ram a ball down into the breech. So what you have to do is produce a musket ball that is undersized. It's much smaller than the bore size.
And the undersized ball bounces around as it travels down the barrel.
And when it leaves the barrel, it could go there, or there, or there.
So the arquebus was definitely not a precision weapon.
They were designed for mass volley fire, and it was like firing a huge blast of shotgun balls down at the enemy. The first side that broke was the side that lost.
The greatest ever challenged Gary to demonstrate the penetrating power of his modern arquebus.
A 2-inch solid piece of English oak. Stand it up on here. I will stake the reputation of my guns and the reputation of my workmanship on the fact that with one shot I can put a hole clean through that board. I'm going to use a small wax candle. I've never done this before with a candle, but I'm certain this is going to work. Well, I hope it is. Right, let's have a look what we've got. It's certainly obliterated the thing. Look at that. We've even got the candle wick is impaled in solid oak. What more can I say? The devastating power of the arquebus, living proof.
The strength of the arquebus comes in volley shot. And for that, you need a lot of people and you need a lot of arquebuses. So as an individual weapon system, it leaves a lot to be desired.
The arquebus was the father, mother, aunt, and uncle of modern firearms, so it deserves its ranking at number 7. Still to come, 6 more hardcore ways to reach out and touch, and we corner the greatest ever weapon. Are you looking at me? For the next greatest ever weapon, we need to wind the clock back 40,000 years. Number 6 greatest ever weapon is the war boomerang, the boomerang that never went away. We know the boomerang is an amazing, if baffling, toy, but the granddaddy of the returning boomerang has an altogether more bloodthirsty use.
It's easy to dismiss the boomerang as a quaint Australian weapon system that has no relevance. But it's hugely important because it goes back to the dawn of history and because it has an equivalent in most civilizations around the world.
The non-returning throwing stick was a common hunting weapon in the ancient world. These were carved sticks that had some aerodynamic properties that made them fly consistently. What's unusual about the Australian throwing stick is that it has stuck around. Today, the skills of making and using the war boomerang have all but disappeared, but the greatest ever traveled to Scotland, of all places, to challenge boomerang maker Richard Ogilvie to reproduce one of his collection of authentic, antique war boomerangs.
This is one, it's a very, very old boomerang. The one we've been using today is a model for replicating a weapon. I would suspect it's a couple of hundred years because it's been finely worked with stone. You can see the rough carvings on the surface.
Richard was going to follow the authentic methods of the Aborigines wherever possible, and the first challenge was to find the right piece of wood.
You can see quite a few potential boomerangs and all these gnarled bends. Typically, the Aboriginals would find a blown tree and take a piece of wood out from that point, and you can see how the grain would run through the trunk through there.
While Richard continued with his precision engineering, we took the original war boomerang to Cambridge University Aeronautics Lab to see exactly what makes it tick. They made a scale model cross-section for their wind tunnel.
We've taken a bit out from here, somewhere in the middle, and tried to replicate that in large.
So what we can see is, on the straight side, the air goes more or less unperturbed, and on the curved side, it's trying to follow the curvature. And that generates locally some low pressures and gives us a force in that direction, a lift force, just like on an aerofoil.
This is a bit like with a helicopter, then, generating lift that will lift the helicopter up the ground.
Exactly, yeah, it's exactly the same mechanism. Well, I think it's impressive that they've discovered the principle of aerofoils in those days by pure trial and error.
Richard's war boomerang had the aerodynamic thumbs up, but how deadly would it prove to be? The greatest ever was prepared to sacrifice a large melon in the name of science. Now that would have hurt.
It's revolutionary for its day, but it's so old, we've almost forgotten how important it was.
It's awfully low-tech, cutting-edge technology for 100,000 years ago.
The Aborigines are a pretty peaceful bunch, and that's just as well, because if you're expecting trouble more serious than a wallaby, you'd better be packing some real firepower. The war boomerang won't be getting any further than number 6. The number 5 greatest ever weapon acquired a formidable reputation on both sides of the moral fence. As a result, it very nearly missed its moment in history. The Thompson submachine gun.
The Thompson is the first submachine gun. It's something you can fire from the hip and spray bullets around.
The Thompson, it's a honey. It shoots wonderfully well. I don't know anybody who's ever held one didn't love it.
Feeling lucky, punk? There is just something about the design of it that just makes it right. It became so iconic, in fact, that any form of submachine gun tends to be called a Tommy gun, and that's fame.
A submachine gun shoots smaller bullets than a regular machine gun. This means that it can be more compact and lighter, and carried by an individual soldier rather than the two-man operation of its big brothers. The Tommy gun enjoyed its finest hour in the hands of Allied forces during the Second World War, and the greatest ever hooked up this World War II veteran with a weapon that kept him out of trouble more than 60 years ago.
Seems to be heavier than I remember it, but I'm not getting any younger. My name is Peter Ford, and I was in number 47 Royal Marine Commando when we landed on Gold Beach on D-Day. I think the Tommy gun in its day was very, very good. You had a certain amount of confidence with a weapon like this because of its destructive capability. If you sprayed a few of these rounds around, it didn't do the enemy much good.
The novel fact with the Thompson is that it fires a very powerful cartridge.
Previous attempts at making a submachine gun had used small caliber bullets, too puny for the job at hand. The use of a whopping .45 caliber pistol round is the key to the Tommy gun's success. Keeping your finger on the trigger in automatic mode would fire 700 rounds a minute.
That slug is a real man-stopper.
But size isn't everything. It's what you do with it that counts. Peter offered to demonstrate the tactical use of the Tommy to movie armorer Nick Jeffries. Their objective, an assault on a dangerous row of bowling pins.
As you're advancing, I fire at the skittles. And now cover me to the next bit of cover we've got.
It's exactly this type of close-quarter assault that the Tommy gun was originally designed for.
It's developed by John F. Thompson at the end of the First World War, responding to the need for a trench broom, something you can clear out trenches full of soldiers. Close fighting, where automatic fire is preferable.
Unfortunately for General Thompson, the First World War ended just as the gun began production. The military had no use for it, so civilian customers had to be found.
In the 1920s, there were no wars going on that involved the United States, but they did have prohibition, which was very fortunate for Thompson because it meant that the gangsters took to his gun like a duck to water.
It's used by Al Capone and all his henchmen, and just as importantly, appears in all the films detailing their activities.
There were a lot of films made about that time where the Tommy gun featured as a weapon of the local gangster. And obviously, the powers that be had a look at it and thought, well, this would be a good little weapon for us.
So, in World War II, the Tommy gun had an opportunity to reform its bad boy image. At last, its time had come. And it was the British commandos who particularly loved it.
We did have the choice of weapons, but some of us liked this one because you just let rip. You know?
Safety considerations meant that Peter had been firing blanks up until now. But he was itching to see the legendary power of the real .45 caliber bullet once more.
I think those bowling pins at that distance would be the equivalent to shooting a man at 100 yards. Here goes.
The virtues of the Tommy were also its downfall.
It's beautifully made. The reason they stopped making them was they cost too much.
And it also rattles. And that can be dangerous if you're in the sort of fighting where you don't want the enemy to know where you are.
The Thompson is a curious weapon. If it wasn't for the Second World War, it would have been just another gun that would have disappeared into the mists of time.
Yeah, quite interesting. It was great, really, yeah.
The Tommy gun was always a luxury weapon, but war is all about the bottom line, and so the Thompson machine gun makes it only to number 5. Coming up, the finest 4 weapons slug it out for the title, the greatest ever. The 4th greatest ever weapon has taken modern warfare's most secret strategy to a new level. Sniping finally got sexy with the Barrett 82. In Iraq, this weapon has proved invaluable both in open terrain and urban fighting, and its awesome power has guaranteed the Barrett a place in the arsenals of the world's elite forces.
A sniper using the Barrett rifle is to a certain extent king of the battlefield.
The Barrett 50 is a wonderfully accurate weapon, and when you squeeze the trigger on it, you know something important just happened.
The Barrett shoots a 50 caliber round. It's a very large bullet. That's not a bullet, mate. There's a bullet. It's effective at a very long range. There's kills getting out to 2 kilometers.
In my opinion, I think the Barrett is an awesome weapon. I wouldn't want to be on the other end of it.
But it isn't just people that the sniper targets. The heavyweight Barrett 82 has built its reputation as an anti-material rifle.
It's an outstanding weapon for engaging equipment and vehicles. You know, like a Jeep-sized target or larger.
Using a $2 cartridge on a static aircraft will render a $50 million fighter aircraft scrap metal.
In military terminology, snipers are a great force multiplier. They can achieve, with a few bullets, what hundreds of infantrymen could achieve in the same battle.
The origin of the modern sniper goes back to World War I, when the Germans started picking off British field commanders at long range.
The British response is to bring in big game hunters from the Empire, from Africa and from India, who will teach soldiers how to stalk a prey and kill with a first-round hit.
Stalking and fieldcraft are still at the core of the sniper's art. Snipers operate in 2-man teams, one shooting while the other observes.
The observer's responsibility is to observe the impacts and give the shooter the adjustments needed to get back onto target if he's missing the target.
But accuracy begins at home, with the gun itself. And crucial to the design of the Barrett is its floating barrel.
The floating barrel, it means quite literally that the barrel floats free. It doesn't touch any other part of the rifle once it emerges from the breech. As long as you let the barrel vibrate, then the next shot will cause exactly the same vibration and will go where you point it. If anything stops that barrel vibrating, if something is pressing on it, then no 2 shots are going to be the same.
The Barrett is all about purity of design, getting down to essentials, and the same goes for the skills of the men who use them.
You want to get your thumb off of the grip, and then you want to take your tip of your finger and put that on the trigger and just slowly squeeze back until the sear releases. The Barrett, I'd trust my life to it. It's a good weapon to have. Keeps heads down and takes some heads out, too.
The Barrett Light 50 in the hands of an expert marksman is a potent cocktail, but it's not a weapon for the faint-hearted. To get further up the greatest ever list, the common man needs to stand some chance of victory. Number 3 on our list is the weapon of the people that changed the course of English history. For once, fantasy is more than matched by reality. It's the longbow, from a time when bows and arrows meant business.
A longbow is really a very, very simple thing. It is a bent stick.
An elegant weapon, very difficult to master. What people don't understand is you have to have arms like Schwarzenegger if you want to draw a longbow.
They're firing off 6 or 7 arrows in a minute. So it's the machine gun of its day.
This arrow weighs 3 ounces, and when I loose it, it'll be doing 193 feet a second. That was bloody close, wasn't it?
Simon Stanley is one of the few men in the world able to shoot a maximum strength medieval longbow with accuracy. Just drawing the string on this bow is the equivalent of lifting his own body weight.
That's not bad, bearing in mind that that arrowhead's blunt.
Simon's skill is the result of starting to shoot the bow at the age of 6, and a body conditioned by a lifetime on the farm. Simon really is medieval. We got him together with Robert Hardy, Shakespearean actor and renowned longbow expert, to reveal the secrets of the longbow.
In essence, it's simply a piece of timber chosen for its strength, its density, its bendability. And so the very best possible wood to make it from is yew wood. It is the perfect God-given spring.
The sapwood resists tension, and the dead heartwood resists compression, and so you get a natural spring. We're going to shoot at that road sign down yonder. It's about 200 yards away. Originally, they used to practice at nothing less than 240 yards for warfare.
The obvious defense against the wooden spring was metal armor. So the medieval period had its very own arms race. More powerful bows meant thicker armor, meant more powerful bows.
At the height of its military use, the longbow arrow could kill a horse at 300 yards, and the right kind of arrowhead would go through a cuirass, a breastplate.
The greatest ever challenged Simon, also a blacksmith, to make an authentic medieval armor-piercing arrowhead.
Shot out of the right bow, it should be capable of shooting through reasonable quality armor of the time.
Brave words, but how would the nifty nose cone perform under test conditions?
This is ballistic putty. In effect, it's the same density as a body, so when it's shot at, it reacts in a similar way.
Now, this is metal that we're going to put in front of it to represent armor plating.
What we've got now is a body behind a steel covering, and I'm going to fire an armor-piercing arrowhead into it and see what we can do.
Let's get out of the way. That's gone through.
If they'd have been hit in the chest from this strike, they'd have been dead instantaneously or very shortly after being hit.
You really wouldn't know what had hit you, the way it penetrated the armour of French knights who thought hitherto that they were invulnerable.
The longbow terrified the French, terrified Europe, and very nearly gave the English kings the kingdom of France.
The longbow dominated English warfare for 4 centuries, eventually being swept aside by the easy charms of gunpowder.
But as Winston Churchill pointed out, the longbow for speed of shooting, accuracy, was not really outshot until the rifled barrel of the American Civil War, which is an incredible thing to think.
As soon as guns unlocked the energy inside black powder, the archer was an endangered species. Time out for the longbow. It's at number 3. Next up, the top slot is in the crosshairs, on target for the greatest ever weapon. Our penultimate greatest ever weapon is the dominant firearm in the world today. Created by the Soviet Union in 1947, it has swept across the world. The Kalashnikov AK-47.
It's such an icon. It's probably the most recognizable firearm in use around the world.
That's the only decent consumer product the Soviet Union ever turned out, except maybe for vodka.
The AK is not fussy. You could give it to somebody who'd never fired a gun before, give them 10 minutes instruction on it. That's it. Sorted.
And with perhaps 100 million AK-47s on the planet, this is a gun with a mandate.
The moment you equip one country, one tribe, one group with an AK-47, you give them an ability to influence events that would hitherto have been absolutely impossible.
But the AK isn't running for president just yet.
I think they're beautiful to look at as well. It's it's a sexy weapon.
And the pride of the Soviet arsenal has found a home away from home in the most unlikely of places, Las Vegas, where its latest incarnation is manufactured.
I'm Lester Canestrelli, and here we are in beautiful Las Vegas, the home of entertainment, and now also the home of one of the finest semi-automatic AK-47 in the world. Today my friend Joe's in town, and whenever my friends are in town, we hook up and talk AK. Good to see you.
The world-beating AK-47 design has been embraced by the sporting rifle fraternity in the United States. Confirmation that the AK-47 has finally come in from the cold.
We've created a whole culture of AK collectors and enthusiasts and historians because of its great history, and also its wonderful inventor, Mikhail Timofeyevich Kalashnikov.
Kalashnikov is now a hero of the revolution, but when he invented the AK-47, he was a humble tank commander emerging from the devastation of World War II.
Kalashnikov's genius really was that AK-47 is cheap, it's simple, and it works. It sort of bridges the gap between the rifle and the submachine gun.
Kalashnikov's design recognizes the fact that most real combat takes place at ranges of around 300 meters or less. The AK delivers deadly force only up to this distance, but it can bombard the target with up to 600 rounds a minute, like a submachine gun. This high rate of fire is achieved by diverting some of the high-pressure gases created when a bullet is fired to eject the spent cartridge and pop another one in the breech, a sort of ballistic recycling. But it's the mass producibility of the AK-47 that's been the key to its success. 5 decades of continuous production mean that over 50 armies now use the AK-47, and crucially, the basic design remains consistent.
This is actually a fairly early Soviet one. This is a Hungarian one, but the magazines, in fact, are completely interchangeable, even though they're made years apart and in different countries. So if you pick up an AK and it doesn't have a magazine, you can pick up any other AK magazine, slot it in, and you know that gun will work.
The interchangeability of AK-47 parts makes it a favorite of NATO special forces in places like Iraq. But there's another advantage, too.
They have a very distinctive sound when they're fired. And if one of these is being fired in the street, the local people, they will not necessarily realize that it's being fired, perhaps by British or American special forces.
Meanwhile, in the Nevada desert, Las Vegas's very own Kalashnikov is getting put through its paces. Featuring all the AK-47 characteristics, apart from fully automatic operation, the SAM-7 is a highly refined homage to the classic AK. The Kalashnikov's reputation is based on reliability in extremis. The greatest ever challenged Arsenal Inc., the manufacturers of the SAM-7, to push Kalashnikov's design to the limit.
Well, normally I wouldn't recommend immersing a firearm in water, but this is an extreme test of its reliability. Okay, it's good and soaked. We're gonna let a little bit of the water out of the barrel. Now it's ready to fire. It worked flawlessly.
Water torture is bad enough, but the enemy of any gun is dust.
Doing this to any firearm.
And the brutal treatment was not over. The greatest ever test of Kalashnikov's masterwork was yet to come.
We're going to see how this SAM-7 stands up to being run over by a Humvee. Well, I'm impressed. That's pretty amazing. It's a testament to the ruggedness of this design, and I wouldn't recommend doing this yourself at home.
The Kalashnikov wears its heart on its sleeve and delivers what it promises. But for today's military, its accuracy lets it down. The AK-47 scoops the #2 position. From 10 down to 2, we've seen deadly springs, wax like lead, and firepower that could ruin your entire day. But our #1 greatest ever weapon packs the definitive punch. The #1 greatest ever weapon creates its own opportunities to win, and you'll never leave it on the bus. The greatest ever weapon is the individual themselves.
It's easy to forget that your mind and your body are weapons in themselves, because most soldiers on the battlefield, when they run out of ammunition, when they've thrown a weapon or stuck it in someone, are then left with feet and hands and mind. So soldiers are always trained in unarmed combat.
All societies have come up with unarmed fighting systems for those moments when you're caught without your hardware.
Martial arts evolved empty-hand when there were no weapons, when you didn't have a choice.
It's probably martial art movies that most of us think of as the ultimate in unarmed combat.
The concept on television that you're going to fight 4 or 5 guys in a dark alley with your martial arts skill is one of the nice fantasies.
But there is a reality behind the vaudeville. At the top of the list of the most effective martial arts is Wing Chun. This was movie legend Bruce Lee's original fighting style, and it packs a real punch.
Instead of using the hand, I will use my shoulder.
Sifu Simon Lau is one of the world's great masters of Wing Chun.
Defense and attack at the same time on the neck, and counter-attack to finish him off. In the Wing Chun system, the movements, they don't do the high kick. They don't have to shout. They don't have to duck down. They don't have to be rolling on the floor. It seems to be very gentle. But when you're good at it, it can be fatal. I will slide down and attack also at the same time. In the Wing Chun system, you are using the whole body for fighting.
The simplicity of Wing Chun is down to its inventor, Wu Mai, a Buddhist nun who lived 300 years ago. Fed up with being mugged on the way to the shrine, she devised a system perfect for women, designed to combat more physically powerful opponents. The greatest ever invited some modern-day nuns to follow in her footsteps and become Wing Chun nuns.
I'm a missionary in Vietnam. I travel a lot in remote villages, and physically we are vulnerable.
I've never ever felt under threat as a prison chaplain, but one never knows.
You have a very good weapon within you, but all you need now is just to discover it. Right hand forward.
But can Simon really turn these novices into warrior nuns? This is the classic Wing Chun training exercise, sticky hands.
If your balance is poor, your arm have no power. You're learning how to get the balance of your body, and then you realize that your arm is not give you any power.
Sticky hands also addresses a fundamental fact of fighting, the reality of confrontation at close range. It's not something that people are used to.
In the Wing Chun system, the sticking hand, it is important because they are get used to the distance of the people who waving their arms in front of them. Yes.
It's conquering our basic fears of violence that all martial art training strives to achieve.
Ancient warriors knew that the calmer you were under duress, the better you could respond. It's not that you suppress your fear, it's that you allow it and accept it, allow it to elevate your function, and it becomes a companion.
Next up, Wing Chun's simultaneous punching and blocking.
Punch, blocking, yes, it will be like this.
To fight effectively, you need to train, and you have to have a certain mental attitude, and that doesn't come easily to everybody. You can teach a lot of people how to wield a pike or fire a gun, but you can't persuade everyone to engage mentally in combat if they don't want to.
Simon hoped the nuns would be inspired by the short-range power of Wing Chun. Board breaking is the classic test of a martial artist's power and concentration. And then it was their turn.
You all can do it.
He's really getting into this.
If the nuns can crack this, they'll be a credit to their habits.
Now, I want you to break this board by the palm strike. Bam, to hit. Hit it with your mind. Our body is the most dangerous weapon. Now you're going to learn how to using it. Now you hit hard. Must not be afraid. Hit hard. Hey!
Combat is enormously shocking. You quite often can't do something in combat that you haven't previously rehearsed. Otherwise, your opponent will simply overwhelm you before you know what's happened, and you're dead.
Hit. Hey!
It's a kind of a new discovery. It's not just a non-violent defense, but it's stop violence before it ever happened.
Mentally must not be afraid.
The best weapon of all time is the human mind. The others are tools. By themselves, they're nothing without us.
Martial training is about learning to harness the mind and the body to act together in the extreme circumstances of unavoidable confrontation. These women have shown that the greatest ever weapon is right at your fingertips.